Good morning. I am back. I am testing different streams to see what's working for me. I was a computer science professor before this, if you would believe, and I want to check on people today because things have been rough for me and they are even rougher for other people. And we have entered into a moment of time that I expected things to get worse, frankly, and yet we didn't learn the lesson of collaboration, of connection. And so, and the problem is, one of the problems with when the world goes to hell is that good people are the ones that suffer the most. It is actually the kindest and the sweetest and those with the most heart and empathy that are the first to have the anxiety. They worry that they are not doing enough. They worry that they are not giving enough of themselves. And many people who are empathetic have been taught to be people pleasers. They will literally give away themselves until they are not okay. And so the lesson this week is anxiety is an alarm that there is already a fire. We think of anxiety as a smoke alarm for what is coming. It'll arise either situationally for the day or weeks, or it is chemical, an imbalance that arises every single morning or evening or whatever it is. And we interpret this anxiety as, wow, this situation I'm in is getting worse, and I have to make sure and watch and make sure it doesn't go past my lines. But here's the problem. If you have anxiety, that means you've already stepped over a boundary with yourself. It is actually, the toast is already smoking. I like to call it the alarm that goes off, the fire alarm that goes off in the kitchen when it just smells smoke from toast. It doesn't know if it's a fire yet or not. It literally is telling you that there's already smoke and fire. It is, if you are waiting for anxiety to tell you what is happening next, then you've already missed the fact that anxiety is there to tell you that it's already not okay. Good morning to we've got some YouTube people who have popped up. Instagram seems to be way more live than YouTube these days, and I'm late, of course. But good morning, Gabriel. What is happening is I am doing a check-in. I usually check in a lot more early in the morning. For me, it just seems to be when people are hanging around. But I checked in today to see if people are okay or not, and to talk a little bit about anxiety and what it is and how it arises and what it is like for people who have chronic concerns, or whether they just have, like a physical disability or disorder or condition, as well as, oh, Gabe, sorry about that. Yeah. You get to be called anything you like. There is I only have a couple rules on my channel. I'm pretty open and relaxed, but consent and boundaries are one of them. So you get to be called anything you want. People know what their name is. I remember being like in grade 2 and being called the wrong name. And I'm like, I don't know anything. I don't know crap, but I know what my name is. So Gabe, nice to have you here. I've got a whole whack of people on Instagram. They'll show up and then you know what they do? They chatter. It's really funny. I'm like, I'm almost superfluous. There's a good outtake. We're going to go with that one. So I'm checking and saying, the world is crap. Whatever age and stage you're at, it is amazing how crummy the world is right now. And Fridays are tiring for people. Often, it was like, oh, yay, the weekend, but the world's not like that anymore. I find a lot of people are really scared of, the time. They don't know what to do. They're still in a cycle. Have a good one. pop in, pop out. That's what my stream is for. I like to call it the breakout room of the internet, so that people can discuss, you know, both mental and physical health struggles in a safe place. And that's why I run a safer stream. You'll notice this one's tagged safer. It just means, I can't control the entire world, but it can be someplace you can pop in for 2 minutes, or it's a place you can talk and hang out all morning if you want. And that's what I love about it, actually, is that how, there's not many places in the world that you can literally go and sort of pick up a phone and make a group call, as it were. There are a few, of course, right? We've got other Discord and Twitch things and stuff like that. But I find that YouTube, people are watching and they're looking for something. It's a little more like, I need something to do. I'm doom scrolling or whatever. And I like to be there a little more live, a little more connected. Like the people on YouTube, yeah, many of them are doing this professionally. It's like TV. They're working it as a job. And I'm really using it old-fashioned style. I remember, I'm so old. Did I remember when YouTube was started? And it was just like people putting crap up. And I'm kind of enjoying that after, I have formal ways of talking to people via podcasts and classes and schools and books and audiobooks and stuff like that, right? But that's why I join here and go like, let's check on people. Let's literally just see if people are okay here. Let's see if people are here. I'm live. I'm literally chatting with people here at this time when they say hello. I do, I take this and I reload it so that people can have this conversation, this quiet voice. Some people really like to have a voice speaking in the background, but they don't really want to watch the video. So I definitely present in my safer streams. Some of them are actually literally like not ASMR, but what do we call it? Body doubling. Someone who's talking and saying some good things and is going to be positive and it's not going to break your heart. They might talk about difficult things. I do talk about difficult stuff, but I bring it back to how we can be optimistic, how we can learn something, how we can figure out what to do. And this morning I was actually talking about anxiety and how people often ask me, how am I optimistic when I have a likely genetic disorder that takes down my joints? I live in constant pain. Everything's more difficult than the rest of the world tends to deal with. And people go like, how do you stay so happy sounding? Is it fake? Is it real? And yeah, some of it's fake. Absolutely. People with chronic illnesses or differences of brains, they learn to fake things. They absolutely learn to fake it. But I have pushed past that a lot. And a lot of what I'm doing isn't faking it anymore. I love dropping the mask. We still have white stories. People talk about, if you don't say something, is it a white lie? Or, where's privacy? I don't tell everything to everybody, but when am I faking it? Like, how do I figure all that out? And I think our world has lost the concept of what used to be called, just private conversation. And I like to label it white stories so that you get a vibe for what it is. The idea that when you share something, you share a part of it, right? Like, I'm not going to come on here and tell you when I went to the washroom, whether or not I washed my clothes today, right? That's not what it's for. But I'm not excluding anything. I'm not leaving that out of life, right? I'm not, that's not me giving a white lie. White stories happen all the time. They're the things we do when we are at the grocery store and we say, how are you? I'm fine. That's a white story, right? Like, you're not really saying you're fine or not. You're just checking in with the cashier and saying yeah, do my groceries. Nice to see you, right? We just don't say things literally in our culture. We like to have these formats for things. And figuring out that you're not okay and who you should tell is part of the deal. Like, if you're really not okay inside, and a lot of people aren't okay inside, it is usually the best people who aren't feeling good. Like, if you're feeling anxious or scared about the world, if you're waking up with anxiety, if you're struggling with a mental concern, or a physical one, pain and annoyance, or the two things together, If those things are happening to you, the likelihood is that you are one of the good people. That actually probably means that you're one of the empathetic people, means that you're probably one of the people who would take care of others. In fact, most people and a lot of anxiety comes from, that goodness being extended too far, that we become not okay because we don't follow our own boundaries of whether or not we should be okay before we give it to somebody else. And I stick with the phrase that my therapist used before me and lots of people do, which is put on your own oxygen mask first in an emergency, in uh, an urgent situation. If you fall unconscious, you can't help smaller, more vulnerable people. And people will take advantage of you. They will take advantage of your wanting to take care of others, and they'll actually take it all for themselves. And the goal of extra help, if you're an optimist, if you're someone who wants to help people, if you're the one who wants to do good, then you should send that energy to smaller, younger, more vulnerable people, and people who are not more vulnerable. They are narcissists, they are emotional vampires, they are attention seekers, they're mean girls. They tend to pretend that for the sake of attention, they will pretend that they need attention, that they're vulnerable, they're whatever. And this is a concept called DARVO, DARVO, that they'll deny and accuse and reverse victim blame. It, and then this leads to anxiety in people. People are just like constantly bombarded. Good people don't know what to do. They're stuck, right? They're like literally the day is going like, oh my God, bad things are happening in the world. Bad things are happening to me. Bad things are happening around me. I don't know what I'm going to do to get out of it. And the first thing is put your own oxygen mask on first so that you can help people who are smaller and more vulnerable than you, smaller, younger, in need of more assistance, and keeping your wits about you so that you don't give that to people who don't deserve it, that you don't do too much and extend yourself too much. So I like to say about anxiety, people, as a counselor, people will come to me and talk about their anxiety. And I've struggled with anxiety many times in my life as well, situational and chemical, both, it happening because of a concern that's going on in my life, and also because of straight up chemistry being wrong, right? I was given the wrong medication and it literally caused chemical anxiety in me because of the medical disorder I have. It was really easy for them to cause it, basically, right, with the wrong meds. And that anxiety, I spent the entire time, and all the people I work with, right, when they're counseling, they go, my God, like this anxiety is telling me that something's not okay. Like, when will it be time to leave my job? When is it time to tell the bully? When is it time to tell the teacher? When is it time to stop being in this relationship? When is it time to do something about it? And the first thing I say about anxiety is that it is not an alarm of something that is coming. Anxiety is an alarm of something that has already happened. And that's why it shows up. You have already passed a boundary. Someone else has already violated consent. Somebody has already put you in a position where you don't get to be the person you are at work, or you can't speak up, or somebody is taking advantage of the order of giving of optimism, support, and help, right? It's supposed to flow downhill. Positivity is supposed to flow down to somebody who needs it more than you, not somebody who's going to take it away from you. And our culture in relationships, in schools, in authority, really like to take that agency away from you. And so you have to decide, when has it gotten so bad? When am I so not okay that it's time to act? And my answer, increasingly, for those who are aware of anxiety in their lives and how it works, is if you're having anxiety, the alarm's already gone off. It's like standing in a house with fire alarms going off and going, Should I do something about these fire alarms? Should I get out of the house? Better safe than sorry. It's already happened, dude. The house is already blaring an alarm. Now, there is the thing known as the toaster alarm, right? The one that there is a smoke alarm that goes off every time you make toast. And that is what chemical anxiety is in my head. That's the analogy I use. I'm like, imagine, every morning you wake up and you make toast and the fire alarm little smoke thing goes off and goes beep, 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 beep. And you go, it's freaking toast. And you rip it off the wall and you wave at it, or you have to press the button or whatever, right? It's just too sensitive. That's what chemical anxiety is in an analogy kind of thing, basically. But situational and the kind of anxiety that comes up in, what should I do about this situation? Should I stop? Should I stay? Should I dump them? Should I change work? Should I speak up against somebody? Is literally already too late. Anxiety is telling you that your body is already not okay. Some line has already been crossed. And it is the too little, too late alarm. You are trying to determine when you should act about the fire alarm that's already going off. And many people will say, well, I have to have proof that there's a fire. Well, you know what? Is it your job in that situation to go and find the fire? Should every person who's in a school, say, or at work when the fire alarm goes off, should all of those people try to find the fire? Or should all of those people, except for a very few who are already designated, should they get out? Even if it's boring, even if it's like we're all going to stand out in the grass, right? It's just a fire alarm or whatever. Yes, the anxiety is telling you it's already time to go. It's already time to make change. It's already time to speak up. It's already time to get therapy for it. It doesn't mean that you can always just leave that job. It doesn't mean that you can't always just say, hey, I'm not going to be bullied anymore. Yeah, if it was as easy as that, then my chronic illness and all my pain and anxiety be gone too. But it is telling you that you have to do something. And the something that you can do first with any anxiety is look for the breach. Look for the break in a boundary. Look for when someone is stepping over your fences. And the simplest, I like to use the analogy of construction fences. Those those little orange fences or whatever that you use. Think about that. Think about where has, between you and somebody else, where has somebody sort of, taken apart the fence that should be there between you and your stuff and theirs and stepped over it? When has a boss said, oh, well, that's really on you? And you're like, wait, isn't that a manager's job? I'm just at the till. I shouldn't have to be yelled at about that. Isn't that you that needs to do that? Or in a relationship, someone says, oh, well, you probably didn't remember, or where's that coming from? Where's the anxiety seated? Not in the, oh my God, I need to do this ahead, but where is it behind you? Anxiety is almost telling you to look around behind you and see where somebody has crossed a fence. Where are they digging a hole or breaking the fences between you? Oh, yeah, no, I'm sorry. I said sorry about that. I meant it, but yeah, I'm not going to fix it though. I took your thing and I'm really sorry. I can't pay you back yet though. Okay, are you actually really sorry, or do we have a plan? Do we have a change or not? Those being taken advantage of somehow in your body, your brain, the choices, is the most common reason for anxiety. And finding a way to see where the fence breach already is. Where is the boundary being broken in your life already? Often it's already happened. You are already struggling at work with the manager who makes you feel small. You're already dealing with too much doom scrolling about politics. You're already feeling defeated by something. It's already happened. The fire, the smoke is already somewhere in the building. Anxiety is not telling you to look forward at something that should worry you. It is telling you to look behind you for something that has already worried you. You just may not have brought it to your conscious mind. You may have learned to ignore it. You may have been taught that that is normal, that you should stay in anxiety and not do anything about it. And those are the wonderful, caring, kind people that people take advantage of. That instead of letting you use your gifts of empathy and support and care for younger, smaller, and more vulnerable people, they say, hey, pass that empathy back up the chain to me, to someone who has more privilege than you. And I mean privileges of all kinds. Like they just have more power. They're the ones, have more stuff. They're whatever it is, right? They take advantage of you somehow, and you're not equals or juniors anymore, right? Your love and care should pass to the person who needs it at the moment. That is how empathy was supposed to work in the human species. But we have gotten out of order. We have gotten too big, too fast, too global, too many people, too much stuff. And we have not learned how, we were not taught by our parents and by parenting in society to put boundaries properly on things. I mean, there's literally rhetoric out there right now. And I use rhetoric, both positive and negative. It's not just a bad word. I mean, negative rhetoric that says that boundaries are like this scary, weird, freaky thing. Like, oh my God, like consent culture is the problem. That is so Darvo. That is so like reverse victimization. It is just nuts. The idea that people in power would say that it's not okay to have boundaries. Yeah. Why? Because they don't want you to have boundaries. Like, duh. They want you to use your love and empathy to take stuff away from you up the chain rather than down the chain to the people who need it, the people who that is so going on right now. That is what's how the US ended up in what is essentially a dictatorship at this point, right? People didn't look behind them and say, hey, this is not okay. You can't take advantage of us because you'll just take advantage of the next person. It's just bullying. And the same techniques are there. And the people who are needed most right now are those that are loving and caring and could change, can change, want to speak up, but the anxiety stops them. And they have been trained to not speak up in that situation. They have been put down because they know they might be in danger. And that's what the anxiety is also telling you, that you will, if you speak up, you will individually be treated as, oh, now if you say something about bullying, you'll be bullied more. If you say something in your relationship, you will be reverse victim even more and gaslit, right? If you say something at work, you're the one that's going to get fired. And that's the problem with boundary breaks, boundary violations in relationships that have junior and senior, and the boundary break is up the hill, right? The bullshit is rolling downhill here. If you give it down the chain, that's one thing, but being told you have to push it up towards people who have more authority with you is literally what is causing the violation. And them saying you shouldn't have boundaries is your hint that they exactly don't know what consent and boundaries are. So the anxiety just ends up in you because you know it's not right. You know it's not right that someone with authority or power, or even who pretends to be in an equal relationship with you, has taken a boundary away from you. And even if you speak up, they just write it off as sorry, or how many times are we going to talk about this? There's ways to diminish it so that you ignore the fact that that bad boundary has already happened. And therefore, you have to feel anxious about it, because it's the only way it can go. It has nowhere out. So it just fills up in your head and in your chest and makes you worry about the thing that's already happened. Just like grief is love filling you up and nowhere to go, so it pours out your eyes. Anxiety is boundary violations building up in your head and your heart, and it has nowhere to go, so it just makes your body pound. But your body keeps the score. Your body remembers. It knows that the boundary violation has already occurred. The bad thing's already happened. And so you are not okay, but you're trained by the world, by all these things, by your parenting, by, the world in general, by high school in North America, to ignore that anxiety and look forward going, oh my God, in the future, I'm going to have to stop this at some point. Like, I'll dump him if it gets really bad, or I'll stop this job when it gets really bad. And the problem is that's literally a slippery slope. When is bad enough? When is enough that you stop the anxiety by stopping the boundary violation? And the problem with those that are willing to violate your boundaries is that they are willing to not listen to you about that boundary violation. It's turtles all the way down. If you tell them there's a boundary violation, they'll go, no, there isn't. You say, no, there really is. You need to help me. No, I don't. It's just going to keep happening. Boundaries are not some sort of fancy, mythical, woke bullshit. They are literally agreement. If I think that we were talking in other groups about how we should be required to spell stuff up, DEI, let's spell it out. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Are you against those things? Like, let's not just say, oh, well, it's about. No, let's talk about it. It's literally about whether or not disabled people are allowed to have door openers. People have made it about who gets hired for jobs, but what about parking spots? Like, what about just the regular old wheelchair, like curb cuts? Do you use curb cuts when you bike or roll stuff or use your stroller? Well, that's there because of DEI. It's not this one thing, right? I think people should be forced to spell it out. Boundaries, consent. Oh my God, it's horrible. That's literally just agreeing to somebody or something. A boundary, a consent is not some fancy woke thing. It's literally, I go, hey, I'm hoping for this. And you go, okay, that could work given this kind of thing. And the other person goes, yeah, no, that sounds good to me. And sure, we do it together. We have consent about getting, say, lunch. And you would probably realize it was a bad conversation if someone said, no, you can't do that. You can't have the lunch you want. I don't care. I want pizza. I'm getting pizza. You can't have something else. And then the next day they do the same thing. That's all we're talking about here. This is not some fancy, deep, but people want to make it like, oh my God, it's some sort of culture. It's a cult. It's religion. If someone is saying that to you, then the likelihood that they themselves are confessing to something is pretty high, right? If they don't have the simple explanation of a fact, I have some simple explanations of fact, and people go, oh, you think this? And I go, I have a simple explanation of fact. I can't convince somebody who can't, I'm not here for the people who can't bring in a simple fact and just believe it as it is because it's a fact. It's not something fancy. Consent is not some weird, crazy left culture. It's literally just agreeing to stuff. It's literally just saying, sure, I want Italian. I want pizza. We had this last time. Okay. It's deciding together. And we have a world that is so off base when it comes to agreement at stuff that we don't even know how to just do a simple agreement. And actually, I, as a computer scientist, computer professor, I love the fact that we had acceptance criteria and that people who are nerds and the geeks who code often understand consent and boundaries in their social culture even more. They're the people that go, this is just an acceptance criteria, like in code, like, it's done because you get yes back or whatever. The thing worked. Like the piece of code went and did its stuff. It said, if this, otherwise this. Boundaries are if then else statements. If you're a bit of a nerd, they're literally just, if I do this, then this, and if not, then I'd have to do this. If you don't do that, if you don't follow up with the agreement, then there's going to be consequences. And those consequences are not like discipline consequences. They're regular old, like, if you take the book and you take it from the library, then you can keep it. If you bring it back, then you can take another book. If you don't bring it back, then you can't take out more books. This is kindergarten, people. Boundaries and consent are literally kindergarten. There's a great poem called Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And it's like, do you know what it's like to just say, I borrowed a book and I can't borrow another one until I give the first one back? And that someone will hold me to it. If I don't bring a whole bunch back, there might be I'm not allowed to do something, or I might be fined, or right? Like, that's a boundary. That's a boundary, people. That's all it is. Oh my God, it's such this confusing thing. Nope. No, it's literally, are you allowed to take out more library books or not? And that simple thing, the idea that we agree to it beforehand when possible, is consent, and that we have an if then else statement about what to do is a boundary. And we know when an if then else in our life has been violated. And anxiety is what happens when we are required to ignore it, when we're the ones who have to not be believed, when we're the ones who have to accept it because of hierarchy, or because of abuse, or of more bad things in the other person. An equal not being an equal. I deal with relationships often, and I'll talk to younger kids and those who are in romantic relationships at the same time. And it's literally, the 10-year-olds who can tell you about bullying are the ones that will also tell you about, what consent and boundaries should be in a romantic relationship. But the parenting styles of the last generations have left us with so little ability to speak up, because we, certain ages and certain stages were taught to not say anything, to not say anything, to not say anything. And then we start to worry that we've said so little that we're actually getting into, white lie territory. Now I'm not being honest or whatever. And all of that gets dumped on us, on the good, healthy, caring people, rather than on the people who are taking advantage of the situation. And people will constantly come to me as when in a counseling or in a volunteer, in my counseling capacity, and say, but don't I have to take care of them? Don't I have to worry that they were hurt or they're sad? No, because the order of operations is that the younger, smaller, or more vulnerable person gets to go first. And if you can't agree to that, then you are a bully. I've had people try to talk me through that. I'm like, no, babies get to go before adults. Kids get to go before parents. That is the rule. If you're not prepared to say that, then you shouldn't be a parent or around kids at all. The person who is in anxiety gets to go before the person who just wants something. The person who's struggling with a medical thing gets to go first. And then people will get into all kinds of like breaking ties of subtle things, like, someone's allergic to the dog, but someone needs a seeing eye dog. Those are all just straw man arguments to get around the whole, yeah, we'll get to the tiny little details later. What about just the fact that you're abusing somebody, you're yelling at somebody, you're hitting them? Those are pretty obvious. There is a more vulnerable person there. There is a younger, smaller, and more vulnerable person there. They go first. That's how we break those ties. Those little tiny ties happen so rarely. We'll talk about them once you stop being a bully. That anxiety is telling you that something of the bad thing has already happened. A boundary has already been stepped on or torn down. And you're letting it because you've been taught that you should, that it's good, that it's the ethical thing, that you have to be better than other people. No, you don't. You have to be gooder than other people, i.e., the normal amount good. And the normal amount good is that when someone who has more authority, who is higher, or who is taking advantage of being equals, when they have pushed you across an if then else, they've pushed you across a boundary and anxiety shows up, you are allowed to say, anxiety tells me that something bad has already happened and that I need to look back at where the anxiety has already happened to me, and that it is okay to speak up to somebody safe and say, I am not okay. I'm being taken advantage of. I'm being bullied. Someone is not being an equal. Someone is pushing me around at work. I don't need to start looking into the future for when it's bad enough. I am allowed to listen to my anxiety right now and say, that means we're already across a boundary. And I need to do something about it because the other person won't. Why do I know that? Because if they would do something about a boundary violation, they wouldn't have violated the boundary in the first place. There is only one exception to that, and that is between equals and you have not said the boundary. That happens, right? Because we're so scared to talk to our friends and our partners and stuff that we sometimes go, oh my God, that's bad and that's anxiety inducing and I need to talk about it. But that's the one exception. Equals who haven't told each other. But if it is a superior, it is somebody in a position of power, or if it's in, even things like teachers and medical people and even the news is in a position of authority because it won't listen, like anything that won't listen in your life is in that position of, you're the more vulnerable. You get to be the person who says, I am either muting, cutting off, or deleting that thing from my life. How much you lower the amount is up to you, and you often have to slide the boundary back. You have to build a fence for yourself saying, hey, I'm not going to text with you right now, or I need to tell you something and I need another person there, or I need to tell a safe person, or I'm not going to talk to you any longer, or I'm going to block you. So it's okay to go in steps. It's okay to lower anxiety in your life. Hey, I'm doom scrolling. Maybe I turn off the news now. I still want to watch the news, but I'm going to keep it to 10 minutes a day. That's a boundary with yourself, right? There's some people right now who should literally turn off the news. It's okay. It is okay for you not to be the person because you are putting on your oxygen mask first. And it is okay for you not to be okay. You are allowed and should and are the only person who can start to speak to your own anxiety. The bad thing, or at least a little bit of the bad thing, has already happened. If you have anxiety, there is already smoke. Whether or not there is fire needs to be determined. but the smoke alarm is already going off. Look behind you and figure out where the smoke is coming from. I'm going to head out. This was a short one for this morning because I got to go do some errands and things and stuff, but I will schedule a few more. I've been a bit healthier last week, really sick. YouTube does not like disabled people to stream or put up videos because we got to get way ahead of our content so that we have consistency, because I am capable, but I do not have capacity, right? My capacity changes all the time. So I will thanks those who popped in on YouTube in and out, and I will thank those on Instagram and Facebook and all the other platforms who are chatting wildly. And I will see you again on a bunch of live streams, and I will be posting a bunch of videos. I've got a raft of shorts coming and a few more long forms coming through. My ADHD deep dive is coming through, and then I'm going to do a deep dive on Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and on lupus and a few other things so that people have a place on the internet to go look for misdiagnosis information and information about taking care of you and your boundaries. I will see you soon. My name is Maria, and I am Little Misdiagnosed.